Bert's Thanksgiving by J.T. Trowbridge. At noon, on a dreary November day, a lonesome little fellow, looking very red about the ears and very blue about the mouth, stood kicking his heels at the door of a cheap eating house in Boston and offering a solitary copy of a morning paper for sale to the people passing. But there were really not many people passing, for it was Thanksgiving Day, and the shops were shut, and everybody who had a home to go to and a dinner to eat seemed to have gone home to eat that dinner, while Bert Hampton, the newsboy, stood trying in vain to sell the last extra left on his hands by the dull business of the morning. An old man with a face that looked pinched, and who was dressed in a seedy black coat and a much battered stovepipe hat, stopped at the same doorway, and, with one hand on the latch, appeared to hesitate between hunger and a sense of poverty before going in. It was possible, however, that he was considering whether he could afford himself the indulgence of a morning paper, seeing as it was Thanksgiving Day, so at least, Bert thought, and accosted him accordingly. "Buy a paper, sir. All about the fire in East Boston and arrest of safe burglars in Springfield. Only 2 cents. The little old man looked at the boy with keen gray eyes, which seemed to light up the pinched and skinny face, and answered in a shrill voice that whistled through the front teeth. "You ought to come down in your price this time of day. You can't expect to sell a morning paper at 12 o'clock for full price." "Well, give me a cent then," said Bert. "That's less than costs, but never mind. I'm bound to sell it anyway." "You look cold," said the old man. "Cold?" replied Bert. "I'm froze, and I want my dinner, and I'm going to have a big dinner too, seeing it's Thanksgiving Day." "Ha! Lucky for you, my boy," said the old man. "You've a home to go to, and friends too, I hope." "No, sir. Nary home and nary friend. Only my mother." Bert hesitated and grew serious, then suddenly changed his tone. "And Hop Houghton. I told him to meet me here, and we'd have a first-rate Thanksgiving dinner together, for it's no fun to be eating alone on Thanksgiving Day. It sets a feller thinking of everything, if he ever had a home and then hain't got a home anymore. It's more lonesome not to eat at all," said the old man, his gray-eyed twinkling. "And what can a boy like you have to think of? Here, I guess I can find 1 cent for you, though there's nothing in the paper, I know." The old man spoke with some feeling. His fingers trembled, and somehow he dropped 2 cents instead of 1 into Bert's hand. "Here, you've made a mistake," cried Bert. "A bargain's a bargain. You've given me a cent too much." "No, I didn't. I never give anyone a cent too much." "But see here," and Bert showed the 2 cents, offering to return 1. "No matter," said the old man. "It will be so much less for my dinner, that's all." Bert had instinctively pocketed the pennies when, on a moment's reflection, his sympathies were excited. "Poor old man," he thought. "He'd seen better days, I guess. Perhaps he's no home. A boy like me can stand it, but I guess it must be hard for him. He meant to give me the odd cent all the while, and I don't believe he has had a decent dinner for many a day." All this, which I have been obliged to write out slowly in words, went through Bert's mind like a flash. He was a generous little fellow, and any kindness shown him, no matter how trifling, made his heart overflow. "Look here," he cried, "where are you going to get your dinner today?" "I can get a bite here as well as anywhere. It doesn't matter much to me," replied the old man. "Well, dine with me," said Bert, laughing. "I'd like to have you." "I'm afraid I couldn't afford to dine as you are going to," said the man with a smile, his eyes twinkling again and his white front teeth shining. "I'll pay for your dinner," Bert explained. "Come, we don't have a Thanksgiving but once a year, and a feller wants a good time then." "But you are waiting for another boy." "Oh, Hop Houghton. He won't come now, it's so late. He's gone to a place down in North Street, I guess. A place I don't like. There's so much tobacco smoke and so much beer drink there." Bert cast a final glance up the street. "No, he won't come now. So much worse for him. He likes the men down there. I don't." Ah, said the man, taking off his hat and giving it a brush with his elbow, as they entered the restaurant, as if trying to appear as respectable as he could in the eyes of a newsboy of such fastidious tastes. I mean, rowdies and such, poor people, if they behave themselves, are just as respectable to me as rich folks. I ain't the least mite aristocratic. Ah, indeed. And the old man smiled again and seemed to look relieved. I'm very glad to hear it. He placed his hat on the floor and took a seat opposite Bert at a little table, which they had all to themselves. Bert offered him the bill of fare. No, I must ask you to choose for me, but nothing very extravagant, you know. I'm used to plain fare. So am I. But I'm going to have a good dinner for once in my life, and so shall you, cried Bert generously. What do you say to chicken soup, and then wind up with a thumping big piece of squash pie? How's that for a Thanksgiving dinner? Sumptuous, said the old man, appearing to glow with the warmth of the room and the prospect of a good dinner. But won't it cost too much? Too much? No, sir, laughed Bert. Chicken soup, 15 cents. Pie, they give tremendous pieces here. Thick, I tell you. 10 cents. That's 25 cents, half a dollar for two. Of course, I don't do this every day in the year, but Mother's glad to have me once in a while. Here, waiter! And Bert gave his princely order, as if it were no very great thing for a liberal young man fellow like him, after all. Where is your mother? Why don't you dine with her? The little man asked. Bert's face grew sober in a moment. That's the question. Why don't I? I'll tell you why I don't. I've got the best mother in the world. What I'm trying to do is make a home for her so we can live together and eat our Thanksgiving dinners together sometime. Some boys want one thing, some other. There's one goes in for good times, another's in such a hurry to get rich he don't care how much he does it. But what I want most of anything is to be with my mother and my two sisters again, and I ain't ashamed to say so. Bert's eyes grew very tender, and he went on, while his companion across the table watched him with a very gentle, searching look. I haven't been with her for 2 years now, hardly at all since Father died. When his business was settled up, he kept a little grocery store on Hanover Street. It was found he hadn't left us anything. We had lived pretty well up to that time, and I and my two sisters had been to school. But then Mother had to do something, and her friends got her places to go out nursing, and she's a nurse now. Everybody likes her, and she has enough to do. We couldn't be with her, of course. She got us boarded at a good place, but I saw how hard it was going to be for her to support us. So I said, I'm a boy. I can do something for myself. You just pay their board and keep them to school, and I'll go to work, and maybe help you a little, besides taking care of myself. What could you do? Said the little old man. That's it. I was only 11 years old, and what could I do? What I should have liked would have been some nice place where I could go do light work and stand a chance of learning a good business. But beggars mustn't be choosers. I couldn't find such a place, and I wasn't going to be loafing around the streets, so I went to selling newspapers. I've sold newspapers ever since, and I shall be 12 years old next month. You like it? Said the old man. I like to get my own living, replied Bert proudly. But what I want is to learn some trade or regular business and settle down and make a home for... But there's no use talking about that. Make the best of things, that's my motto. Don't this soup smell good? Oh, don't it taste good too? They haven't put so much chicken in yours as they have in mine. If you don't mind my having tasted it, we'll change. The old man declined this liberal offer, took Bert's advice to help himself freely to bread, which didn't cost anything, and ate his soup with prodigious relish, as it seemed to Bert, who grew more and more hospitable and patronizing as the repast proceeded. Come now, won't you have something between the soup and the pie? Don't be afraid, I'll pay for it. Thanksgiving don't come but once a year. You won't? A cup of tea, then, to go with your pie. I think I will have a cup of tea. You are so kind, said the old man. All right, here, waiter. 2 pieces of your fattest and biggest squash pie and a cup of tea, strong, for this gentleman. I've told you about myself, added Bert. Suppose now you tell me something. About myself? Yes, I think that would go pretty well with the pie. But the man shook his head. I could go back and tell about my plans and hopes when I was a lad of your age, but it would be too much like your own story over again. Life isn't what we think it will be when we are young. You'll find that out soon enough. I am all alone in the world now, and I am 67 years old. Have some cheese with your pie, won't you? It must be so lonely at your age. What do you do for a living? I have a little place in Devonshire Street. My name is Crooker. You'll find me up 2 flights of stairs, back room at the right. Come and see me, and I'll tell you all about my business, and perhaps help you to such a place as you want, for I know several businessmen. Now don't fail. And Mr. Crooker wrote his address with a little stub of a pencil on the corner of the newspaper which had led to their acquaintance, tore it off carefully, and gave it to Bert. Thereupon the latter took a card from his pocket. Not a very clean one, I must say. I am speaking of the card, though the remark will apply equally well to the pocket, and handed it across the table to his new friend. Herbert Hampton, dealer in newspapers, the old man read, with his sharp gray eyes, which glanced up funnily at Bert, seeming to say, "Isn't this rather aristocratic for a 12-year-old newsboy?" Bert blushed and explained, "Got up for me by a printer's boy I know. I'd done some favors for him, so he made me a few cards. Handy to have sometimes, you know." "Well, Herbert," said the little old man, "I'm glad to have made your acquaintance. The pie was excellent. Not any more, thank you. And I hope you'll come and see me. You'll find me in very humble quarters, but you are not aristocratic, you say. Now, won't you let me pay for my dinner? I believe I have money enough. Let me see." Bert would not hear of such a thing, but walked up to the desk and settled the bill with the air of a person who did not regard a trifling expense. When he looked around again, the little old man was gone. "Never mind. I'll go and see him the first chance I have," said Bert, as he looked at the penciled strip of newspaper margin again before putting it into his basket. He then went round to his miserable quarters in the top of a cheap lodging-house, where he made himself ready, by means of soap and water and a broken comb, to walk 5 miles into the suburbs and get a sight, if only for 5 minutes, of his mother. On the following Monday, Bert, having a leisure hour, went to call on his new acquaintance in Devonshire Street. Having climbed the 2 flights, he found the door of the back room at the right ajar, and looking in, saw Mr. Crooker at a desk, in the act of receiving a roll of money from a well-dressed visitor. Bert entered unnoticed and waited till the money was counted and a receipt signed. Then, as the visitor departed, old Mr. Crooker looked around and saw Bert. He offered him a chair, then turned to lock up the money in a safe. "So this is your place of business?" said Bert, glancing about the plain office room. "What do you do here?" "I buy real estate sometimes, sell, rent, and so forth." "Who for?" asked Bert. "For myself," said little old Mr. Crooker with a smile. Bert stared, perfectly aghast at the situation. This then was the man whom he had invited to dinner and treated so patronizingly the preceding Thursday. I thought you was a poor man." "I am a poor man," said Mr. Crooker, locking his safe. "Money doesn't make a man rich. I've money enough. I own houses in the city. They give me something to think of, and so keep me alive. I had truer riches once, but I lost them long ago." From the way the old man's voice trembled and eyes glistened, Bert thought he must have meant by these riches friend he had lost, wife, and children perhaps. "To think of me inviting you to dinner," the boy cried, abashed and ashamed. "It was odd," and Mr. Crooker showed his white front teeth with a smile, "but it may turn out to have been a lucky circumstance for both of us. I like you, I believe in you, and I have an offer to make to you. I want a trusty, bright boy in this office, somebody I can bring up to my business and leave it with, as I get too old to attend it to myself. What do you say?" What could Bert say? Again that afternoon he walked, or rather ran, to his mother, and after consulting with her, joyfully accepted Mr. Crooker's offer. Interviews between his mother and his employer soon followed, resulting in something for which at first the boy had not dared to hope. The lonely, childless old man who owned so many houses wanted a home, and one of these houses he offered to Mrs. Hampton, with ample support for herself and her children, if she would just make it a home for him. Of course, this proposition was accepted, and Bert soon had the satisfaction of seeing the great ambition of his youth accomplished. He had employment, which promised to become a profitable business, as indeed it did in a few years. He and the old man proved so useful to each other. And more than that, he was united once more with his mother and sisters in a happy home where he has since had a good many Thanksgiving dinners. The end.